The street was buzzing with flashing red and blue lights as two cops stood face to face, their voices sharp, their tempers flaring. Officer Daniels, a seasoned veteran, clenched his fists, his jaw tight with frustration. Across from him, Officer Reynolds, younger but just as headstrong, wasn't backing down. What started as a routine patrol had somehow exploded into a heated argument in the middle of the street. Bystanders watched, unsure whether to step in or step back. Then, out of nowhere, a black SUV pulled up. The tension froze for a second as the door swung open, and stepping out was none other than Donald Trump himself. The officers' argument came to a sudden halt as all eyes locked onto the former president. What was he doing here? Why now? The entire street seemed to hold its breath as he adjusted his suit, scanned the scene, and then, nobody could have predicted what happened next. What he said, what he did, it flipped the entire situation on its head in a way no one saw coming. Was he here by accident, or did he know something the others didn't? The two officers, moments ago ready to throw punches, now stood stunned, their anger replaced by something else entirely. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get any crazier. This is a story you don't want to miss. Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you speechless. For a moment, neither officer moved. The entire block had gone quiet, the weight of the unexpected visitor pressing down on the scene. Trump's expression was unreadable as he took a step forward, glancing between Daniels and Reynolds. The two cops, who had been seconds away from losing control, now stood frozen, their argument momentarily forgotten. A murmur spread through the small crowd gathering nearby. Some pulled out their phones, recording, whispering. This wasn't just a random encounter, something felt off. Why was he here? And why now, in the middle of what should have been just another tense patrol gone wrong? Daniels cleared his throat, forcing himself to speak. Mr. President, former president, what are you doing here? His voice, usually steady and authoritative, had a slight hesitation. Reynolds, still trying to catch up to the situation, shot a glance at his partner, then back at Trump, who didn't answer right away. Instead, Trump took another step closer, tilting his head as if sizing them up. You two look like you've got a problem, he finally said, his voice even but pointed. Big problem. He folded his arms, and I think I might know why. The way he said it sent a chill through both men. It wasn't just an observation. It sounded like he knew something. But how could he? What could he possibly know about whatever was boiling between them? The air grew heavier, and then, just as one of them was about to speak, Trump dropped a bombshell. Daniels and Reynolds exchanged quick, uneasy glances. Whatever issues they had between them, whatever had pushed them to the edge just moments ago, suddenly seemed small compared to the weight of what Trump had just implied. He knew something, but what? And how? The crowd had grown now, people whispering, phones still recording. The tension in the air wasn't just between the officers anymore, it had spread. Even the distant hum of traffic felt muted against the uncertainty crackling between them. Reynolds finally found his voice. What do you mean by that? His tone was sharper than he intended, but his nerves were on edge. Trump didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at Daniels, then back at Reynolds, as if deciding how much to say. Then, in that signature way of his, he leaned in slightly and said, "Let's just say, you're not the only ones paying attention." Daniels felt his pulse quicken. Was this about the argument? Or something bigger? His mind raced through possibilities, department politics and investigation, something they weren't supposed to know. And then it hit him. There was a case, a sensitive one they had both been involved in but never spoke about, something that had been buried until now. Reynolds must have been thinking the same thing because his expression darkened. "Who told you that?" he asked, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. Trump didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said enough. And just like that, everything changed. Daniel's mouth went dry. His mind raced back to that case, the one he and Reynolds had silently agreed to forget. They had followed orders, done what was asked, and then moved on. At least, that's what they had told themselves. But now, standing here, with Trump of all people hinting at something deeper, he realized they hadn't really moved on at all. The weight of it had been there all along, festering beneath the surface, pushing them toward the explosion that almost happened tonight. Reynolds took a step closer, lowering his voice. Who else knows? His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something Daniels had never seen before, uncertainty, maybe even fear. Trump exhaled, almost like he was deciding whether to say more. Let's just say, he began, pausing for effect, some things don't stay buried forever. A sudden rush of adrenaline hit Daniels. His instincts screamed at him. Someone had dug up the past. And if Trump knew, then others did too. Maybe someone powerful, someone who wanted answers, or worse, revenge. Reynolds' jaw clenched. If you know something, you need to tell us. Trump tilted his head slightly. You sure you want that? His words hung heavy in the air. Before either officer could respond, a black sedan pulled up at the corner. Tinted windows, no plates. Daniels felt the hairs on his neck rise. Then the back door opened, and a figure stepped out. And just like that, everything spiraled out of control. Daniels' hand instinctively hovered near his holster. Reynolds shifted his weight, every muscle in his body tensing. The energy on the street changed. What had been an argument between two cops just moments ago had become something else entirely, something dangerous. The figure stepping out of the black sedan moved with purpose, their face obscured by the dim glow of the streetlights. The door shut behind them with a heavy thud. The crowd, sensing the shift in atmosphere, fell into an uneasy silence. Even Trump, who had been completely in control up until now, narrowed his eyes slightly, watching. Then the figure finally stepped forward, and both Daniels and Reynolds felt their stomachs drop. It was Captain Monroe, their boss, the last person they expected to see here. Officers, Monroe said, his voice calm but firm. We need to talk, now. Daniels swallowed hard. Monroe wasn't just their captain, he had been involved in that case too. And if he was here, it meant this wasn't just a coincidence. Someone had forced his hand. Reynolds took a slow breath. Captain, what's going on? Monroe glanced at Trump, then back at them. You should ask yourselves that, he said, his tone edged with something neither of them liked. Because right now, you've got a choice to make. A chill ran through Daniels. This wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about what happened next. And whatever choice they made, there was no turning back. Daniels' pulse pounded in his ears. A choice. That's what Monroe had said. But between what? His instincts screamed that whatever was coming next wasn't going to end well. Reynolds must have felt it too because his hand clenched into a fist at his side. Trump watched them carefully, almost like he was waiting to see what they'd do. Monroe took a slow step forward, his voice dropping lower. You both know what this is about. The case, the cover-up. His eyes flicked to Trump for just a second before locking back on them. It's out now, and the people who want answers, they aren't going to wait. Daniels felt his stomach tighten, so it was true. Someone had dug it up. And now, standing in the middle of the street with all eyes on them, there was no more running from it. Reynolds finally spoke, his voice sharp. So what do we do? Monroe exhaled. You do what you should have done back then. Tell the truth. The words hit hard. The truth meant everything changed. Careers could end. Lives could be ruined. But before either of them could answer, Trump suddenly raised a hand. Hold on, he said, his voice calm but firm. Who says they have to play by those rules? Everyone turned to him. Then he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and held it up. Because I think I just found a way to fix this, he said. Daniels and Reynolds exchanged a glance. And then Monroe's face changed. His usual unreadable expression slipped for just a second, and in that moment, Daniels saw it, shock, maybe even fear. Whatever was in Trump's hand, it wasn't just an answer. It was power, And just like that, everything they thought they knew shifted once again. Daniels held his breath as Trump unfolded the paper, his movements slow, deliberate. Monroe stayed still, his expression carefully controlled now, but it was too late. Daniels had already seen the flicker of unease in his eyes. Reynolds took a half step closer, his gaze locked on the document. Trump let the silence drag for just a second before speaking. "This," he said, shaking the paper slightly, "is everything." Daniels and Reynolds didn't need to see it to know what it was. The case, the cover-up, the truth they had tried to bury, it was all there. Someone had been watching, someone had been keeping records, and now it was in Trump's hands. Monroe exhaled through his nose, his jaw tightening. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice careful. Trump smirked slightly. "Simple," he said. "Fix it, the right way." The weight of those words hung in the air. Daniels felt the tension in his chest start to loosen. Maybe this was their way out. Not through silence, not through more secrets, but by finally doing what they should have done all along. Reynolds glanced at him, a silent question in his eyes. Daniels gave a small nod. Monroe looked between them, then let out a slow breath. "All right," he muttered. Trump handed him the paper. Good choice. And just like that, it was over. Or at least it was the beginning of something new. The truth was out, and now they had to live with it.